A music theory concept that a lot of people find confusing are modes. And that's because there's sort of a weird relationship between modes, keys, and scales. And really all three of those things, if you were to take a Venn diagram of them, there's some weird overlap and they're all technically different, but in some ways they're kind of the same, or at least they have some elements that are the same. So in this video, I'm going to try to break down and explain exactly what modes are and what it is about them that is useful, especially to us as songwriters. So I think the first step to understanding what modes really are is understanding the relationship between major keys and minor keys. So you may or may not know that every major key has what we would call a relative minor key, or you could see it as every minor key has a relative major key. And all that really means is that there is a minor key that shares the exact same notes as a other major key. So for example, the key of C major actually has the same exact notes as the key of A minor. A minor is C major's relative minor key. The only difference between those two is which note we treat as the home note or the tonic note. So in the key of C major, we treat the note C and the chord C major as that home chord, the main chord that we return to. But in the key of A minor, even though the notes are exactly the same, the only real difference is that we treat A as that home note that sort of the whole song centers around. So it's almost like the gravity of the song inevitably pulls the song back to the A note in A minor, whereas in the context of C major, even though all the notes are the same, that sort of metaphorical gravity of the song is trying to go back to the C note. So basically what we've established here is that technically any minor key has a major key that has the exact same notes. And the main takeaway here is that really the main difference in sound is simply what note we treated as that center of gravity or the main home tonic note. That's really the only difference, right? Because C major sounds significantly different than the key of A minor, even though they share the exact same notes. Simply changing what our tonic note is completely changes the sound of the song. So, how does this connect to modes? Well, of course, in the context of any key, you actually have 7 different notes, right? So let's take C major and continue on that for a second. In C major, we have the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. And you've noticed that we actually, with our major key and minor key, already have taken 2 of those 7 notes and treated them as the 1, or as the tonic. So for C major, we've treated C as the tonic, and then we've treated A as the tonic already for the minor key in A minor. So when we are constraining ourselves to just terminology of major key and minor key, we're really restricting ourselves to 2 out of the 7 different options of notes to treat as the tonic in the context of a certain key signature. And really, those are also modes. So for example, a major key, or C major, would also be the same as C Ionian, because C Ionian is just the mode name for C major. But what about the minor key? Well, minor key also shares a name with a mode. The Aeolian mode is the exact same as the minor key. So technically, our major key and minor key also are modes. Ionian equals major, and Aeolian equals minor. What we have with modes are actually 5 more modes that are for every other note that we have in the context of a certain key signature. With our major and minor, we have C and A covered, but with modes, we have C and A covered as well. But we also have modes for all of the 5 other notes we have. So with our C major example, we haven't treated D as the tonic, E as the tonic, F, G, or B. So the other modes that we have actually are really just treating those different notes as the tonic. So for example, if we treated D as the tonic with a C major key signature, aka the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, in that context, if we actually treated D as the tonic, that would be known as the DORIAN mode. If we treated E as the tonic, that would be a Phrygian mode. If we treated F as the tonic, that would be a Lydian mode. If we treated G as the tonic, that would be a MIXOLYDIAN mode. We've already covered A as the Aeolian mode, aka the minor key. And then if we treat B as the tonic note, that would be the LOCRIAN mode. So in a sense, modes are sort of like a superset of keys, or at least the way we normally think of keys, because often we think of keys sort of as natural minor and major. Technically, we also have others like harmonic minor and melodic minor. But when it comes to natural minor and major, those are sort of the main two keys that we tend to think of, or key types that we tend to think of. With modes, it takes those two and makes it so that there are 7 different options. And what we covered earlier in this video is that really, given the same exact notes, you can have a totally different sound to your music depending on which note you choose as your root note, as your tonic note, right? So back to the C-A example, if we treat C as the tonic for C major versus A as the tonic for A minor, which have the exact same notes, those have very different sounds, right? We've all heard a song that's in a minor key versus a major key. It sounds completely different. So each of those modes also sound completely different. So for example, Lydian mode sounds even brighter and more major than a major key. Or Phrygian mode sounds even darker than a minor key. And MIXOLYDIAN is sort of in the middle, but it's a little closer to a major key than a minor key. And then DORIAN is sort of in the middle, but it's closer to a true minor key than it is a major key. And then of course there is LOCRIAN, which is basically the diminished key, if you will. You could sort of see it that way, and is by basically all accounts virtually useless, but the other modes, super useful. Phrygian mode is a great way to make a song sound even darker than what it would sound like if it were written in a regular minor key or Aeolian mode, because it's one shade darker. And Dorian is a great option if you want something that sounds a little darker, but isn't quite as dark as a minor key. MIXOLYDIAN is something that was really commonly used and is still commonly used in rock music because it's a little less bright than a traditional major key, but it's still technically a version of a major key. It's still built off of a major chord. Your one chord in the context of a MIXOLYDIAN mode is still going to be a major chord, whereas in Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian, aka natural minor, your one chord is going to be a minor chord. So overall, it's going to be minor keys for those 3 modes. And then you have 3 modes that are more major keys, if you will. So that's basically what modes are. They're really that simple, and they are super, super useful, especially if you want to be able to have more than just sort of the major equals happy versus minor equals sad, which is sort of reductionist and not super accurate anyway. But there is some truth to that, right? If you want different shades in between those, or shades even brighter than a major key and darker than a minor key, modes are a great way to go. Because again, if you want something even brighter and more heavenly sounding than a major key, Lydian mode will give you that sound. If you want something that's even more dark and more epic than a minor key, use a Phrygian mode. Phrygian's super common in hard rock music, for example. And then if you want something maybe in between that's a little more gray, go with Dorian or MIXOLYDIAN. So I'm going to have other videos that break down sort of each of these on an individual basis, but this is an overall view on really what modes are. Hopefully this was helpful to you. If it was, something else you may find helpful is my free guide on the 4 pillars of music theory that every songwriter needs to know. I think modes are super helpful. I think they're a great tool to add to the toolbox for songwriters, but there are 4 pieces that are absolutely essential, and those are really intervals, which is at the basis of almost everything else important in music theory, and then chords, chord progressions, and keys. Those are the 4 things that you absolutely must know as a songwriter to become so much more efficient at music writing, make it so much more easy to write great music, and so that you're not just guessing about what notes sound good together and constantly writing melodies that don't quite work, but you can't figure out why. Just understanding those 4 pillars will make it so that basically all of that just makes sense overnight once you learn those 4. There's a lot of really other helpful music theory concepts like sus chords and other types of chords like add chords, 7th chords. There's a ton of useful practical music theory out there. Music theory is super practical and useful as songwriters. Don't let anybody tell you different. The only people who are songwriters who tell you you don't need to know music theory, or that music theory is academic knowledge and not actually practical, are simply people who don't know music theory. Nobody who knows music theory would ever say such a ridiculous thing. So learn music theory. Great way to do that. Great resource to start is that free guide. Link in the description. Totally free. My gift to you for watching this video. I appreciate every single one of you. Again, I hope this video was helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next one.